And so, I have two sayings. We don't know what we don't know, right? How would we know to look under the sink? We don't know. How would we know to know? We don't know, right? But the more dangerous one, Mike, is actually we have to forget what we think we know. Like the assumptions that we bring are really dangerous because they, many cases, just simply don't hold water, right? We just assume something. And if you look at those two sayings, we don't know what we don't know, we have to forget what we think we know. If you synthesize those into one word, it's humility.
Michael, we got you back here to El Salvador again.
You did. Very excited to be back, Mike. Yeah.
It's nice that I don't have to worry about remembering your name. Usually I'm horrible with names, so yours is one that I'll really start to have some questions if I can't remember.
Yeah.
We were just reminiscing a little bit before we went on air about when we first met. It was 2021.
Yep.
Which I thought it was a lot longer ago, but that
just seems like it.
But it was at the Bitcoin conference in Miami.
In Miami.
In the midst of COVID. I think they were the first conference, like big conference that had happened in the U.S. It was supposed to be in L.A. and they moved it to Miami because L.A. wouldn't let them have it.
Correct.
And I remember, walking through the building, just looking at the exhibit building and coming across, you guys had a company for ECI, your real estate development company.
Yeah.
And I was curious because it was at a Bitcoin conference and you have this. And so it was talking about how you guys had all these properties for sale and people could pay in Bitcoin.
Correct.
So that piqued my interest right away because we were still in the very early stages of the Bitcoin Beach project. And one of the things that we had kind of planned, our long-term plan, was to bring Bitcoin development into El Zonte, to see it happen in Bitcoin, to people purchasing in Bitcoin, and really focused on Bitcoiners. In order for a circular Bitcoin economy to work, you need to have Bitcoiners spending Bitcoin. And so we thought, well, the best way to do that is to sell houses to Bitcoiners and to design a product that would be attractive to them to come in. And I had actually pre the project, pre-COVID, had purchased some land in El Zonte when things were still cheap, when nobody wanted to be here because it was the murder capital of the world. But I just felt like this place has a lot of promise. And so I remember coming to you and saying, hey, we should, this is what we want to do. And you were very nice, but very like, yeah, I don't think we're going to do anything in El Salvador. We're focused on Nicaragua and Belize and Honduras and these other places. But we went to El Salvador once, and I don't think it's quite there yet. And but you were like, hey, I'm happy to help you, as you think through development. We've made a ton of mistakes, and so if you decide to develop this, you gave me your card, and we exchanged numbers. And then later that afternoon, Bukele made the announcement that they were adopting Bitcoin as legal tender. And then the next morning, I got a call from you and said, hey, no, we're coming to El Salvador. We're building something there. We'll be there next week.
Let's talk. Yes.
So that's how quickly that decision by Bukele to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, caused people to focus for the first time.
Really mattered for the country, right? I mean, obviously, lots of things have happened since then on many economic fronts and social fronts, right? But yes, that announcement was sending a flag up to the world saying, you know what, we're different.
Quick interruption with an exciting announcement for you guys. We have the Plan B conference coming to El Salvador. For those of you who have gone to the conference in Lugano in the past, you know what an amazing job they do. So I'm super excited they're bringing it to El Salvador this year, January 30th and 31st. So we got a little promo video to show you guys, and then we'll get back to the podcast. But as you can see from the video, there's just a number of the top speakers from the space that are going to be coming to speak. We're also doing a full Spanish track, and I think this is the first time any conference has done like a full Spanish track alongside the English track. So we have 2 stages that are going to be Spanish only. We really want to focus on having an impact on Latin America, so I'm excited that they're doing that. The other thing that they're really focusing on is circular Bitcoin economies. And obviously at Bitcoin at Beach, that's what we're all about, is circular Bitcoin economy. So we have actually been very involved with helping them put on this conference, and very much encourage you guys to make it part of your schedule for this year. We have a discount code for you also. So if you put in Bitcoin Beach, you will get a discount. So make sure you get your tickets now before they go up in cost. And then also make sure you get your accommodations, because it is going to be packed in El Salvador during this conference.
We're going to do something truly unique and revolutionary that will change the nature of our country for the 21st century. No, that was powerful, and you're right. And can I just relate sort of?
No, because you've been working in Latin America for decades. So I'd love to hear kind of what your preconceived notions of El Salvador were, and then how that's changed over the last few years.
So our company's 29 years old. We started in Belize, then we ended up getting some property in Nicaragua in 2000, property in Costa Rica a few years later, Panama. Now we work in Honduras as well with the co-development project. And so, we've expanded throughout the region over the years. But let me back up before I talk about, sort of my trip to El Salvador early. I remember you approaching me and saying, hey, Mike Peterson, whatever, and trade cards or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then, the Bukele makes the announcement. I'm like, hey, well, let's talk. So you came back by, I remember the next day, we talked, and I said, well, I'm going to need a map of the property. I'm going to need a survey. I need to see a title, because I get a lot of people coming up to me. I want you to develop my property. Well, it's not their property. Right? And when I usually give people this little list of 3-4 things, whatever, maybe an overview, something like 90% of them never follow up because they can't or they don't or whatever. But I don't remember what day the conference was, but a few days later, I get a few emails from, here comes a title, here comes a map, here comes a survey. I'm like, all right, this guy's serious. So you and I start going back and forth, and in my mind, you're just a landowner here in El Zonte, but Bukele's doing something really cool, and El Salvador's now mentally on my map, right, as a place I want to do business. And now we went back and forth for 4, 5, 6 weeks, I don't remember. So I finally kind of submit everything over to my business partner, who's a lawyer, because he's the guy that would draft up any kind of agreements and things like that. The next morning, I wake up and I have this voicemail from his secretary. She says, do you know who you're dealing with in El Salvador? And the first thing I think to myself is, oh, crap. Like, I don't know who it is, but, right?
It must be bad.
It must be bad, right? The tone of her voice, right? So I call up, I say, Mary, like, okay, just what? She goes, it's Mike Peterson. I'm like, yep, I do know that. She goes, do you know who he is? I'm like, I guess not. Anyway, she goes on to tell me about the Forbes article or the Fortune article and the 60 Minutes and and the thing that really impressed me the most, Mike, and this is why I feel so good about working something with you at some point in the future, is for 6 weeks, you didn't really say anything other than, I'm a landowner, I'm working here, I'm doing great things in the community. We did talk about that. We talked about Hope House. We talked about your project at Bitcoin Beach, right? So we talked about those kinds of things, but you never held up the celebrity flag and said, I'm big shot, whatever. And you are.
Well, I'm not a big shot.
No, and you are. I know you're playing it down. But to me, the fact that we went 4, 5, 6 weeks and you never played that card as anything, right? To me, that said so much about who you are as a person. And that really gave me the comfort and desire to work with you on some basis. So I just say all that to say, well done, well played, and I'm really glad to be sitting here with you. But El Salvador, so back about 10 years ago, I think, I was invited by El Salvador's Ministry of Foreign Investment to come on a trip. They picked some people from different parts of Panama, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica and other places, and they brought, 50 of us up for 4 or 5 days, ran us around on buses. They had 3, tourism, manufacturing, and maybe financial services. I can't remember the others was. So we kind of got broken up a little bit too. But for those 3, 4, 5 days on the bus running around, I'm like, oh, this is interesting, but not yet.
Yeah.
Which is why I gave you the answer I gave you, not yet. But boy, have things changed. Wow. Yeah.
It's been a wild ride these last 4 years.
Yes, it has.
Before we get too farther into it, I would love to, and I think I know a little bit, but I'll learn some things here. how did you wind up becoming a developer in Latin America? I mean, that's
Yeah.
not something that, is on your, when you're growing up in the U.S. that you think of a choice that you want to do.
Right. It wasn't on that list at the career placement office in my high school, right?
Firefighter, developer in Latin America.
Right. Yeah. No. So I got into the computer business right out of college, and on the sales side, on the PC side of things, and did very, very well in the Washington D.C. area from 1986 to about 1998, and really loved it. But the owner of the company would never give me a piece of his business. And so my old college roommate and buddy, Joel Nagel, he and I were going to Belize. He was doing a lot of asset protection work for physicians, right? So Belize has great financial laws for trusts and things like that to protect assets of physicians. And that was his niche. So anyway, so we were down there. We bought a property. We started doing long before Airbnb, we were renting out our condo in Belize. I ran an ad in the back of the Washington Post magazine, rent my condo in Belize for $800 a week or whatever. It's crazy. Anyway, but what we found incredibly was that when you went to buy a North American, U.S. and Canadian, going to Belize to buy property, there was no way to finance it. No bank in the U.S. or Canada would loan you the money, and no bank down there would lend money to foreigners, right? And so we started this little mortgage company in 1993, and that mortgage company provided mortgages to North Americans to buy property in Belize. We moved over into Honduras and Roatan, and then we expanded to Costa Rica and other places. And so for about 10 years, we had this little mortgage company. It ultimately did become a bank. So we now, we founded a bank in Belize, but it's still a mortgage bank. That's what we do. We provide mortgages to folks. But we can talk about financing later because, Bitcoin has changed the landscape of financing incredibly for Bitcoiners, right? For Bitcoiners. And that's an important thing that I'd like to talk about a little bit because I think it's powerful. But the story of becoming a developer was, again, Joel's the deal guy, the money guy, the contracts, the paperwork. I'm the boots on the ground guy. So I'm running in and out of these condos and homes, checking the collateral before we'll lend money on it. And what I'm seeing is just crazy stuff. And I've written a book about it, and then we can talk. But I mean, I remember going into one condo, and you walk into the living room, right? There's one outlet on the wall with two outlet strips with extension cords with outlet strips at the end of the extension cord. Yeah, you're laughing. You get it, right? Right? And wait a minute. There's only one outlet in the living room, right? And the light in the bathroom's back here and stay here. And so we started to look at all these kinds of little things, and we just simply said, if we decided to fix those things, it would largely be free, right? I mean, put the light back here, put it over here. Door handles at different heights. Put them all at the right height, right? The bar height, put your legs underneath on a stool, right? I mean, all those kinds of things. We said, if you have more outlets, it's $100. But at the end of the day, we could build a product that would be familiar and comfortable for a North American clientele for the same money that they were getting something that was well built. I'm not complaining about the structure, but it just,
But just things that you would take for granted. I always tell people, I was like, if you don't specify, you will not get it. So even with the electrical outlets, so they'll think, okay, we've solved this. We told them put 4 electrical outlets in that building. Yep. I'm like, no. You better specify where you want them, or you'll come and they'll be lined up all right next to each other.
Right, they're perfect.
And they'll be like, you told us to put 4 in, we put 4 in. We don't know why you would want 4, but there they are.
Exactly.
And you're just like,
Yeah,
so
right.
That's the joys of building as a first-time builder in Latin America. If you don't know what you're doing, and if you're if you're working with somebody that's not familiar with working with foreigners, that's
exactly. And
and I'm sure you've seen even way crazier things.
Way crazier, right? But we as a development company said we can solve these problems. We can build a product that's familiar, right? And so we have. That was the genesis of our development company. I left the computer business in '98 and went full time onto the development side since then. So, but our development company started in 1993. With that little mortgage company, and so we've been around doing this for a long, long time.
And how would you handle the mortgages? Because isn't it tough in a lot of Latin American countries to repossess properties if they default on them?
It is two things. One, the model we use in Belize. Once we became a bank in Belize, we could actually register a mortgage note and have claim to the property. But before, as a mortgage company, before we were a bank, and then outside of Belize, we have a very simple process. We take the property. We have the seller transfer it into an international business corporation, a Belize IBC, right? So the title of the property goes into an IBC.
Okay.
The bank holds the shares of that company as collateral till the loan's paid off. And then if you're the if you're the borrower, we give you the company. Now it's yours. Keep it in the company. Take it out of the company. But the bank technically owns the property.
So you're not repossessing it. You already own it.
You own it.
Did you ever have any instance where you had to like physically remove people from properties, or was that
no?
not
Because they're North Americans generally, and we've had very few. We only loan 50% loan to value, so we've had very, very few cases where we had to take a property back in the first place. But no, we've never had to remove somebody from a property either, because they tend to be vacation properties and rental properties.
Yeah.
And by the time somebody's in a bad enough situation that they're giving up something they put half the money into to begin with,
they're probably in the middle of a nasty divorce or something like that, and their life's gone. Yeah,
exactly.
So they just kind of walk away.
So that
makes sense.
Yeah.
And then I know that you wound up then living in Nicaragua for a number of years. So how did that transpire, and how was that for your family? Because I believe you raised your kids up down there.
We did. So in 2000, we bought this giant piece of property in Nicaragua. And for the first couple years after we bought it, we were doing some I would call just basic groundwork. I was still living outside of Washington, D.C., about 100 miles west of Washington. I always like to qualify that. Shepherdstown, West Virginia, little.
Where? Oh,
Shepherdstown,
My in-laws live in Stanton, Virginia. I don't know if you know where that is.
I do.
It's pretty close to the border with West Virginia.
It is, and so that's the Shenandoah Valley.
Yeah.
So you just keep on going up the Shenandoah Valley about 40 miles, and you come to Shepherdstown.
Okay.
So
we were just there for Christmas. So.
Oh, nice.
I kept thinking, I'm like, one of these times, I've never been into West Virginia. I'm like, one of these times we need to drive on up the road and
one hour, come up and visit me. I'll take you to lunch.
We have you still have a house there.
That's where we live there. Yeah.
Okay.
So in 2002, I said to my lovely wife Carol, I said, "Hey, honey, we got to go to Nicaragua for 2-3 years to get this project started." We were ready to hire, real engineers and architects and start the physical work, right? And so we packed up our at the time 2-year-old daughter, myself, her, a container of stuff, sent it to Nicaragua, and rented a house. Right? What do you do for 2 or 3 years? Kept our house in Shepherdstown, and after about 3.5 years, we built out the team. We had a chief operating officer, architects, engineers, accounting people, everything, the whole office. And my wife and I went out to dinner to a wonderful restaurant. It's not there anymore, Casa de los Nogueros. And it was our favorite restaurant. We took a piece of paper, Mike, and we wrote, "Stay in Nicaragua, go back to the U.S." Drew a line down the middle. And we just sat there at dinner and we wrote down every single thing we could think of for stay in Nicaragua, go back to the U.S. The stay in Nicaragua down the front, onto the back, go home kind of thing, maybe halfway down the front. And then we put stars next to the things that were really important, right? Because like on the go back to the U.S. side, fresh berries. We couldn't get fresh berries, right? And we love berries. I mean, like I said, anything that popped to mind, we wrote it down, right? But family, like that was the thing, like family. What we realized when we started to dig into the starred one on that side, family, we actually spent more quality time with our families living in Nicaragua than we did when we lived in the States, because they would come down for 2 weeks. We'd go up for a month in the summer, right? Whereas when we lived close by, we'd drop Mandy off on date night, and we'd see her parents for 15 minutes, go to a movie, dinner, come home, she'd be asleep, talk for 10 minutes, and leave. So the quality time with families was actually better living in Nicaragua. And by the end of the evening, it was really clear we were going to stay a while longer. And a while turned out to be 14 years. We had another little daughter, Emily, who came along. Education was great. We sent them to the German school for a number of years, the Nordic school for a number of years. They both trained in classical ballet with Nicaragua's prima ballerina. Both my daughters are now professional ballet dancers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. One of them's 20, so it's her first year as a professional, but the other's 24. Wow. Yeah, so some of the stuff you wouldn't even think, like classical ballet training in Nicaragua.
Were you guys living in Managua, or were you living out on the Grand Pacifica?
We did.
property?
We lived in Managua.
Okay,
and it's an hour to Grand Pacifica, so it was easy to be out there. But I travel a lot, so for me, being closer to the airport was more important than being on the project site. Yeah.
So tell me where Bitcoin came into the business? Because I don't think it wasn't that you were a Bitcoiner and so you brought Bitcoin in. If I remember right, it was more you were having clients that were like, "Hey, we want to pay for these properties in Bitcoin."
Absolutely. You know, we've always looked. I've always been a sort of a monetary rebel myself, right? Right, and you know, I've always had what I call hard assets. I love hard assets, whether it's real estate, metals, gold, silver. But things that are tangible and hold worth over time, right? And I didn't pay any attention to Bitcoin, sadly. Sadly, we'd all say that, or many of us can. Anyway, but, when it first came out, I'm like, well, I'm too busy. And I actually got introduced to a guy who was very, very wealthy at a conference, and I think it was $5 or $6. He's like, Mike, you got to get some Bitcoin. I'm like, okay. And then I tried to figure out how to do it, and I'm like, oh, later, I don't know. And later became, many years later.
Well, in the early days, it was hard. Like if you weren't, well, you have no excuse. You were a computer person. So.
Fair enough. But just was like, later, kind of, So I didn't, but but it's okay. I mean, it is what it is. But my introduction to Bitcoin came through a lot of the conferences that I speak at, Freedom Fest, New Orleans Investment Conference, Anarchapulco, the Dollar Vigilante, Jeff Berwick, right? So I speak at a lot of conferences where there's this alternative monetary theory being espoused, right? So I'm exposed to it, and so when and we've taken metals. We do take metals, right? Somebody has metal and they want to trade for a house, no problem. Okay. To me, if somebody came up to me now and said, Mike, I got this racehorse, right? If I could value the racehorse, I might take it. I don't know, right? Because it's a hard asset, right? I'm trading something. So when the first person approached us, it was for one of our teak. So we do teak plantations as well as properties, physical properties, right? We have, teak plantations are physical, but they're not a residence, right? So it's an agricultural investment. So I planted my very first teak plantation in Panama, 100 acres, in 1999. So now our trees are 25 years old, right? And they're coming into harvest. Next year from now, we'll be harvesting them, right? So the first transaction somebody approached us with, 7, 8 years ago, it was pre-COVID, so 7, 8 years ago now, whatever, was somebody said, will you take Bitcoin for some teak? And by this point I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, I kind of now, so we had one of the guys set up a wallet. We took the Bitcoin, we gave title to the property for the guy with the teak. And we said, well, that was pretty easy. That was pretty easy.
Much easier than trying to get it through the bank and the wires and having it held up. And
I mean, setting up the wallet was a pain in the butt. But once that was done, the transaction was, piece of cake, right?
You're like, wait, that's it? We're done? We're like,
no, that was really the experience. No, it really was. We're like, what? I'm like, yeah, we're done. I'm like, okay. So anyway, so we quickly realized that there would be people who would also, other people would want to transact. And he had some friends that said, well, you do this for property, like houses or condos or land. We said, sure. I mean, so that was the genesis of it. I'm going to say it was 2017. I could be off by a year, but somewhere around 17. And and then we just started to advertise it. Like we'll take Bitcoin, whatever. And then I got invited to speak at the Bitcoin conference. That was how we met.
Okay.
So right. So anyway, that's the
because I'd come across your guys' website before because I was, as we had these dreams of building this, circular Bitcoin economy here, and I'm just like, is there anybody doing stuff? And so I'd come across that in, I think online or somewhere, and then I ran into you in the conference, and I kind of put 2 and 2 together because I was like, I think that other one was in Nicaragua also, and so
we've always been out there a little bit, Before we got online, you're saying your wife wanted a little bit more boring, right?
Yes, that's what she always tells me. Can we just have a little boring for a little while?
Well, you're not giving her any boring, and I'm not giving my wife any boring. Okay,
So I want to talk to you about this book because I think this could be very helpful for a lot of the people that listen to our show, because a lot of them are Canadians or Americans, Europeans that are fed up with what's happening in their home country, and they want to move to El Salvador specifically because it's adopted the Bitcoin standard, and so. But I think a lot of them underestimate some of the challenges that come with that. You kind of everybody thinks of themselves as kind of rough and tumble and hardy, but there's some creature comforts and things, and just a lot of times it's just cultural things that
Right.
shock you. And so would love to hear how the book came about, and then talk to us about some of your favorite parts in the book. And the title
Sure.
is what? It's how to buy a property the
How to
first
buy your home overseas and get it right the first time.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
That's
I
the
love
key.
that. Yeah,
Right.
the last part.
Yeah.
It's easy to buy a home overseas.
Very
but
easy. It's that
Getting
second
it
part.
right, that's
Yeah.
the key.
Well, so for the last 25 years, I've been speaking at a lot of conferences, and even at the Bitcoin conference, I'm not a Bitcoiner really. So I don't have much to contribute on that, right? So what I talk about at most conferences is this idea of how to get it right the first time. And so I have many presentations, but the core presentation that kind of seems to work its way into almost all of them is this idea of how do we change how we think? Because when we go from the US and Canada, Europe as well, but when we go out of North America and come to the developing world, whether it's here, Africa, Asia, it doesn't matter. We're leaving the land of seller beware and we're moving to the land of buyer beware. And we as a consumer don't know how to transact in a buyer beware environment. The list, one of my presentation slides, it has, 15 or 20 regulatory agencies, laws that protect you, the buyer, from me, the seller, right? So you're in this bubble. Just think lemon laws and Ralph Nader consumer advocacy groups, right? Just all kinds of legislation. When you go overseas, all of a sudden you're outside of that bubble, and so now, like, how do you ask the right questions?
Yeah.
And so, for example, we talk about the the outlets, right? But one of my favorite ones, because it's so visual, is are all the bathrooms in the home plumbed for hot water? And coming out of North America, most of us go, duh, yeah, right, of course. But the only way and many aren't.
Most aren't.
Most aren't.
Most are not. In
can you
Latin
repeat
America.
that? Most
are not. Definitely. Especially if you're going to the beach area or something like that.
Right.
Where it's generally warm weather.
Right.
They definitely don't think to put hot water in.
Why would you want hot water?
My first house that we bought here didn't have hot water. We bought the Widowmaker things that you put up there and try not to
that's in the book.
yourself. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So but a lot of these properties aren't cheap, right?
Yeah.
It's $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 property, and my question.
There's no hot water.
Yeah. And so the only way we know is we have to get down on our hands and knees and we have to look under a sink, right? Is there one pipe coming out of the wall with the splitter? Because a lot of times you'll see, the taps are normal. You got a faucet on both sides. But they're both cold, right? Yeah. So the only way we really know is to look under the sink, how many pipes coming out, right? That's one way. And is there a hot water heater? But even so, maybe the hot water only goes to the master bedroom. It doesn't, So like just a simple question like that, before we write a check, we can get Widowmakers and we can do other things too. But
it's a huge thing because people think like, oh, well, we'll have to buy a water heater. No. That's not the challenge. You've got all block cement construction that now you have to chip out to put lines in. Like it's a major thing. It's not just buying a water heater.
No, it's not. And so so the Widowmaker, chipping and blocking, repainting. Just on and on and on, right? So I have this 30 questions that I came up with that a consumer should ask, or evaluate before they buy a property overseas, because they aren't questions we would think to ever ask in the U.S. or Canada, but we need to ask them. But the bottom line in this book and these 30 questions, because there's 100 things, there's 1,000 things you should ask, right? But if we can change how somebody thinks, right? We move them from, oh yeah, it's all good and whatever, it's Kansas, right? No, Toto, it's not Kansas anymore, and it's very different. It's foreign, and if we change how we think, and so I have two sayings: we don't know what we don't know, right? How would we know to look under the sink? We don't know. How would we know to know? We don't know, right? But the more dangerous one, Mike, is actually we have to forget what we think we know. Like the assumptions that we bring are really dangerous because they, many cases, just simply don't hold water, right? We just assume something. And if you look at those two sayings, we don't know what we don't know, we have to forget what we think we know. If you synthesize those into one word, it's humility. And if we approach a transaction outside our home country with humility, right, and recognize, wow, we are somewhere, like, we better ask lots of questions. Yeah. There are no dumb questions. Like that humble approach, more than anything else, will give us the best chance of getting it right the first time, right? And then resources like my book, of course, that have the questions and other things in there, can help us begin to think that way. But truly, as an individual transacting outside our home country, humility is our best asset. Yeah. Yeah.
No, definitely. There's lots of things after living for a long time that you just realize. I mean, even little that maybe they seem inconsequential, but they can cause problems. It's like a lot of times they won't vent the toilets here. Like
right.
They don't. I guess don't want to spend the extra money on the pipe to vent it, and so that's why you have these toilets go blah, 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 and don't never flush right. And so if you're going to build a house, you got to specifically tell them, hey, vent the toilet, and you may have to actually tell them how to do it because they've never done it before. And you make sure they vent it right so that the foul air isn't going into your room. And so there's crazy little things like that if you're not a builder, you would never think.
No, I have half a chapter in my book about how to deal with architects, right? And it's both ways, by the way, right? So they might not vent the toilet, or they might not vent we just saw it today, might not vent the stove out to the hood, the hood to the outside, right? And there's lots of other things. 4 outlets, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? I mean, but here's the thing this is why humility is important. See, a lot of that stuff is, I know what I want.
Yeah.
I know what I want. But a local architect is going to know a lot of things that you don't know, right? How to get the airflow through the property.
Water is a big thing.
Water's a big thing.
Make sure that you deal with the amount of rain that.
Absolutely.
That was a learning curve.
Put a tank up on top of your house, or put it up high, because the water is going to go off from time to time, or frequently, or whatever it is, right? And so if you have a tank on top of your house, then you're going to have gravity-fed water pressure, right? So a local architect is going to bring wisdom to to it, right? So you just have to be humble enough to say, well, I really do want an outlet on every wall. But yes, I think you're right. I do want a tank up on top, or the window placements, or whatever it is. And you ask about culture shock, because a lot of this stuff is part of that sort of that get it right the first time, right? But when you actually land in a new country, what I found and what I talk about in the book is, we'll get the big things. Like we will tackle the big things because we have to. Like they're in our face, we have to wrestle them to the ground, we have to deal with them. What I found, and what I've watched other people experience, is that culture shock is really the ankle biters, right? It's the ankle biters. It's the stuff, the little things that just kind of nip at you all the time that just aren't, in our minds, quite right, right? I mean, they're just right here. I mean, they're perfectly right here, but it's just not quite right from where we came from, or how we.
Why wouldn't you want mariachi music at 11 p.m. like when you're
loud as all get out? Yeah, or morteros going off at 3 a.m, over your house, right? So So the ankle biters were really the things that I have experienced and have watched other people experience that seem to be the culture shock triggers. The other thing that's true, and I think it holds true here in El Salvador as well as Nicaragua and most of Central America, is that if and I want to segue into something really important that you're doing, and I think it's critically important. If seeing poverty up close rips your heart out every time you see it, this is probably not the place for you. Like you're not going to be in the U.S. If you live in the suburbs, you can avoid poverty. You don't ever have to see poverty, right? But if you live in Latin America, you are going to see poverty. It's going to be right up in your face frequently. Maybe not every day, but frequently. And if every time you see it, it rips your heart out, like don't come, because this is definitely not the right place for you. What I have found, it worked for me and it's worked for you and it's worked for other people, is like it gives us a chance to make a powerful and meaningful difference in the lives of people, because we're here, we're in it, we see it, like we're part of this community. You're part of this community with Hope House and Bitcoin Beach, right? And we do a lot of work with our communities around where we develop, right? And so our ability to transform a community from what I would call a traditional corporate social responsibility piece is great. And I love that. I think there's lots of greatness about that. But what I think's even better, and this is where you have shined, and I think where we have shined in the places we work, when you come in and you create economic sustainability, right? I'll just give one example. We have a lot of groups that come to Nicaragua and they'll dig a water well, or they'll do something nice and do something wonderful in a community. But 3 years later, the pump at the bottom of the well dies. Well, that community doesn't have the money to replace the pump, and now they're back to not having good water anymore, right? Which, I mean, okay, simple fix, but it takes money, time, commitment. Somebody has to do it, right? Whereas when you build an economic engine, a resort community that has people employed, right, with a cash economy or a Bitcoin economy here, right, but a monetary economy as opposed to a subsistence economy without it, right? Like all of a sudden you're giving a economic sustainability that will last for generations, if not centuries, right, to a community that before probably didn't have that, and that is powerfully meaningful and significant, and that's our legacy, Mike. That's the legacy that we get to provide where we work and where we live and where we call home and community. I think that's the most powerful thing that you and I get to deliver. We get to live it, we get to deliver it, and I know that for me and for our team, it's why we do what we do. Yes, we want to make money. Yes, we want to serve a client. Like all that's, it's all part of the equation. But this other part is the piece that just comes along for the ride that's just, awesome. And so when I see that poverty up close, right, I can't help that person. I mean, I may be able to help that person, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to, and I'm not going to let it rip my heart out, because what we're going to do is we're going to do what changes the system foundationally so that the lives of them and many others like them can be improved. Forever is a long time, but in
the long term.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're doing that, man. You've done it. Bringing Bitcoin to this community transformed El Zonte in a way that is truly, revolutionary in powerful, awesome ways.
It's been a privilege to be part of the team that's done it, for sure. I mean, it's been really neat to see the people impacted, the youth that have hope now that before were just kind of like, well, best case scenario, go to the U.S. illegally. Now they're building businesses here, and so it's really neat to see. So I think for a lot of the people, this book would definitely help them a lot as they're looking to buy. So where can people get the book, and is there any little snippets or any little vignettes that you want to give us from the book that you think would stick with people? Like, I'm curious, can you, like when you meet somebody, can you tell like this person's going to make it and this person's not going to make it? Like, do you have that intuition?
Wow, you're a great host. No one's ever asked me that question before. I don't know. Let me kind of ponder into it. I think sometimes it's pretty obvious. Look, I would say that the one common thread, and it's in our mission statement as ECI, which is our development company, right? We provide, I don't even know our mission statement, but it's horrible, but adventurous souls, right?
Yeah.
Inspired residences for adventurous souls, right? Our marketing people come up with that stuff. But at the end of the day, right, I live it, I embody it, right? I don't need to remember it, I am it, right? I mean, I am an adventurous soul, you're an adventurous soul. So when I meet somebody who has an adventurous soul, yeah, I'm pretty sure they're going to make it, right? I mean, the bumps and the ankle biters and that kind of stuff, right? I'm way less certain if I don't think they'll make it, right? Because I don't have any basis. But on the affirmative side, yes. Yeah, an adventurous soul, likely to make it. Yeah, likely to make it. In terms of vignettes in the book, no, it's a very practical book, right? It's really a how-to book, right? It does cover the 30 questions we should ask, how we change how we think, but there are sections in there about culture shock, right? There's a whole chapter on culture shock, things about medical, and some of the stuff that, again, people are frustrated in the U.S. and Canada. I mean, too much regulation, I think, in a lot of cases. I mean, we kind of laughing beforehand about the no masking at the conference, right? I mean, like if you want to live freer, as crazy as it sounds, move to Central America.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You will live a much freer life, which is kind of weird, but it's true, right?
No, 100%.
It's true.
I feel like my kids can have a childhood more similar to the childhood I had here than they could in the U.S. these days.
I agree. So. Yeah, kind of tragic.
Yeah.
I remember we were living in Nicaragua with the two daughters. I remember we were up at an amusement park in the U.S., and there was a boulder about this high by the bathrooms. One of my wife and I think my older daughter were in the bathroom, and Emily might have been 4 or 5. She climbs up on this boulder. I don't know, it's like 4 feet off the ground, right by the bathrooms, right? Next thing I know, I see some security guard, marching right over at us. I'm like, honey, get off of there. And she goes, why? I'm like, you're not allowed to sit on a boulder in the U.S. Like, you can't sit on a boulder, honey. It's like, wow. Right.
I love it.
Yeah.
So for people that are thinking, I think the best time to read a book like this is actually a year or more before you're actually planning on moving. Obviously, if you're planning on moving sooner, get the book now and read it. But these are things that give you a long-term idea. Because a lot of times people look for a house and all this stuff without even really thinking about what they really want. And then they wind up in a place that doesn't suit their needs.
Well, that's right. And friction costs in and out are a lot more expensive in Latin America. Look, the U.S. has a very efficient, and Canada has a very efficient real estate market, right? You're in, you're out, you pay some commission, but there's no transfer taxes and other things like that, right? But in Latin America, you're going to pay commissions, but you're also going to pay transfer taxes to the government in, out, right? The bureaucratic nature of the in and out is a high friction, high dollar volume kind of. So getting it right is important. By the way, I'm on Amazon. You ask. Yeah, Amazon. Michael K. Cobb is the way to find it, or the title. But
awesome. No, I definitely tell people. Those are the type of things that make a huge difference.
Right, 99 cents, man.
Yeah.
99 cents. Although I have a great deal. I'm not supposed to talk about it, but I will anyway. So, but because Amazon, I probably shouldn't. Well, I'm going to do it. I'm already rolling. Anyway, Amazon doesn't look at how many sales you have. What they really look at is how many reviews you have. For like their algorithm on what book they'll kind of push up to the top of the, the next you might like section, right? Anyway, so my deal is order the book for 99 cents, and if you don't like it, leave a review. Go on and leave a review. I don't care, good, bad, 1 star, no star, 5. I don't care. Leave a review. Email me a screenshot of your review, and I'll mail you a hard copy, autographed, personalized to you, and a Belize chocolate bar.
Oh, awesome.
So I'm trying to get my review count up, okay?
No, I know those algorithms are important. So they can get the e-version for 99 cents, and they write a review, and then you'll send them.
And I'll send them a hard copy.
What a deal.
And a chocolate bar.
Yeah, you can't beat that.
Yeah,
you can't beat that. All right, so we've covered the book.
Yeah.
Make sure you guys check it out. But now let's talk about some of the properties. I know we'd mentioned we have some long-term plans here in El Zonte to do some stuff, and it'll all be full Bitcoin. People can pay in Bitcoin. But there's people interested in other parts of the world, or people that are looking to buy for something now. And I know you guys have some inventory in some other places. So
we do.
Let's run through some of the projects that you have. And I think we have some pictures, don't we, Paco?
And
talk about some of the unique aspects of those.
Yeah, sure. So this first one is Nicaragua. This is our Grand Pacifica community. It's a beat. This is one of our neighborhoods. We have really 3 distinct neighborhoods. This neighborhood has an oceanfront phase, which are the Bella homes there directly on the ocean. You can see under construction. And then about 75 or 80 of these solar off-grid hybrid homes just off the water. This is a fantastic surf beach. In fact, walking here from lunch, you bumped into a guy who had just been to our competition. We just had the Latin America surf competition right here.
Alice Pro.
Alice Pro, right to the left there. Anyway, so it's a great surf beach. We also have a break called the Meat Grinder, which is really a professional surf break that's called the Meat Grinder for a reason. Yeah, for a reason. But these homes, these homes were 150 to 200,000 off the water, and about 500 to $1 million on the water.
Okay.
And there's another view of it. It's under construction. It'll be finished up. The homes that are currently being built will be finished up by May or June of this year.
And this is actually kind of in central Nicaragua, right? Like directly to the coast from Managua. But a lot of people think about Nicaragua, they think about the south and that whole area. But this is another area that supposedly has good surf.
Thank you. You're right.
And it's very close to the capital city, which is a big convenience.
1 hour from Managua. In fact, if you kind of look along the coast, after 1, 2, you see a third point sticking out way off in the distance. That's our phase 1, which has about 80 homes and about maybe 50 condos. And the Meat Grinder is right off of the front of that one. So the property is long. It's about 6 kilometers one end to the other.
Wow.
Yeah, 6 kilometers. And then right in the middle, we've got another neighborhood of large single-family home sites with the first home now finished. So, and we have 9 holes of golf. And so it's a resort community.
Yeah.
maybe a third of the people. I think we have about 200 addresses. When this finishes, we'll have a little over 200 addresses, and maybe a third of the people live there year round.
Okay.
So it's a resort community, and then wintertime more people come, obviously. But it's So this one's finishing up. This is Belize. This is our 202 room Marriott resort. Under construction. It's a rendering, of course, but it's under construction. It'll finish up in February of next year, 26. So some ideas of what it'll look like, but a beautiful oceanfront resort.
And these are
there.
ones. You guys have a deal with Marriott, but people can buy them, but then put them in. I'm assuming there's some type of rental program.
They do, right. So this is a Marriott Resort and Residences program. It's whole ownership. So in fact, the residence that would be this one you're looking out right there would be about $350,000. You own it. It's titled to you.
Can we scroll back, Paco, to the
Yeah. So right here, I mean, you're looking out over the pool. You're looking at the ocean. $350,000. You own it. You have title to it. Then Marriott puts it in the rental program, and another company, a third-party management company, runs the hotel for us and for Marriott. So it's and we take Bitcoin. I mean, and they transact with Bitcoin. The other thing I mentioned, financing a minute ago, which I think is really important to even segue, because this hotel project was actually funded. It was, I think, I mean, somebody can prove me wrong. I'd love to know. Actually, I really would love to know if something else happened. But when we figured out how to fund this hotel, we have a Bitcoin investor who's significantly wealthy in Bitcoin. He pledged about $100 million of Bitcoin for us to borrow $35 million to build this hotel, right? So he pledged the Bitcoin as collateral. The Bitcoin was staked so that the staking would provide a return.
So what do you mean by stake? Because usually you wouldn't really stake Bitcoin. That it is with Ethereum and some of the other things. But
the hedge fund pays him an interest component on his $100 million.
So they must be doing something with it, that they're making some money off.
They are.
Yeah.
But the coins themselves are in, I can't remember, the Firefox or something. I can't remember. Again, my business partner handles the legal side.
Yeah.
But the coins are locked up. And there's a doomsday hedge on the coins, so that even if Bitcoin went to nothing, they really can't take those coins, right? So
they won't get liquidated. They must have some type of put option or something at a low level.
So the coins are protected because the investor never wants to give up his coins, right? He gets the interest payment from the hedge fund to kind of pay him back. He then has a loan to us, and we have to pay him back, right? So in the worst case scenario, his coins get paid off with the interest over, I think, 8-9 years, right? So that's kind of that. If we don't pay him back for the loan on the hotel, he owns the hotel, right? I mean, so the only thing that can happen to him is win or win bigger, right? Which is great. But he's been able to take his coins and use them to transact to finance something else. And in this case, our hotel and a loan. But we have people who have put up their Bitcoin in a much smaller amount of money, right? $1 million of Bitcoin, say, for example, to buy a $300,000 property, right? Because you can get it's about a third, right? That's your ratio on it. So they get to keep their coins. They get to have their condo, right? They get to own a condo.
So they're probably putting some type of wallet that has multi-sig custody, where
it is multi-custody. You're right. Yes, it is multi-custody. And if somebody really wants to know about that, I am not the right. You want to know about plumbing under?
No,
a sink
I would just tell viewers, make sure anytime you enter anything, make sure you understand all the details, because we've seen in the last cycle there was a lot of these things where you could pledge your Bitcoin, and you could earn, supposedly earn interest on them, and a lot of them were Ponzi schemes, and people lost their Bitcoin. So I always tell people, be very just careful. Make sure you understand. There's no free lunch, so make sure you understand what's actually happening.
I agree. And if somebody's interested in this, send a note to you or me, and I'll connect you with the people who do this for us. Right?
Okay.
It's not what I do.
Yeah.
But here's the reality. Anything that takes time is the factor, right? If somebody says, "Oh yeah, you can do it in 3 years," well, that kind of interest rate is just not even market compatible, right? You just can't even get those, right? So again, 7, 8, 9 years, right? I mean, that the rule of 72 puts that at 8% or something, right, or 9%. So when you start to look at those kind of numbers, they fit they're market rate as opposed to, oh yeah, you're going to make 33% of No. I mean, no, right? But yes, measure twice, cut once. But yes, have people reach out if they're looking to own something with us. They can pay in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
We'll take their Bitcoin. But if they don't want to pay with their Bitcoin, they want to keep their Bitcoin. We have the ability to help them own something without,
To
giving
secure
up,
a loan.
secure a loan and not give
Yeah.
up their Bitcoin. Right. Exactly.
And for this particular project, they can then put their thing back into the rental pool and
Absolutely.
and at least cover monthly expenses, if not make an income off of it.
I would
I don't
say
know. I don't know what you guys usually tell people to anticipate, but
Well, we're careful about that
Yeah.
because the future is very hard to predict, right? What I can tell you is that there are 202 keys, and our development company, is keeping 130 of them because we want the return on investment that those 130 rooms will produce, right? And I think that's a very valid. It's one of the questions in the book, right? Like if you're talking to a developer and they're telling you what a great return you're going to get for buying one of their condos, right? Because they're going to rent it all the time and do whatever. The next question would be, well, if it's such a great return, how many are you keeping, right? Because if it's a great return, you should want to keep as many as possible. We do, we are, and I think that's the right question to ask. But in this case, we're keeping about 60% of the units in this hotel.
So for me, this would raise the concern if you guys own that many units.
Great question.
When people are renting, are they
Yep.
only going to have theirs rented if all of yours have already been rented out, or do they get put into a general pool where it's like done in a kind of fair way?
Great question. So I mentioned there's a third-party operator, a company called Highgate. Highgate absolutely could care less whose unit it is. It doesn't matter, right? And what they care about is profitability because they get paid as a percentage of the profit, right? And so for them, even wear and tear and guest satisfaction are the only thing that matters. But there's it'll be, look, high floors are requested, first floors are requested. So if you really want to have a better chance to get more rentals than somebody else, take a high floor or a low floor. But here's the thing, Mike, we're offering up these 70 residences right now. We're going to keep whatever's left over, right? So if you go with the theory of high floor, low floor, we might end up with all the middle floors or a lot of the middle floors. We are going to get the short end of that stick, right, on any kind of request. But generally, it's about what we understand on the numbers, it's about a 5% delta, right? There's the 5% factor on a request. 95% of it's just, I never request a room.
Yeah.
Like I want a room, right? A king bed, great, boom. Whatever I get there, they put me in. So that's how a hotel operates.
And I'm just curious, in a deal like this, how much goes to the owner versus to the operator?
If
they rent a room for
$200
or $100.
100's easy. It won't be, but the math is good in my head. The owner gets 70, management gets 30.
Oh,
that's
better than I would have thought.
Yeah. And the owner pays expenses, right? So I mean, there's an owner expense, but at the end of the day, they will certainly cover their expenses and do a little bit better, maybe a lot better.
Yeah.
But we're happy to share that information privately with an individual.
Which, I mean, to be honest, for a vacation thing, if you can just get your expenses covered and still have a place you can use, you're doing better than most vacation homeowners.
And have a property that's probably going to appreciate over time in a country like Belize, right? I mean, look, El Salvador put a nitrous oxide injector system in their engine, right? They had an 8-cylinder engine that was kind of working okay, right? And Bukele put a nitrous and then stomped it down, and like this economy is, rolling, right? Belize is maybe the more traditional 8 cylinders, but really on an upswing. I mean, it has gone.
And it's always been in demand.
It has, but it hasn't always been known.
Okay.
Now it's in the popular psyche, right? And what changed that were the cruise ships who started coming there about 20 years ago. Because, cruise ship drops off 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people, right? And now on some days there's 5 cruise ships, and they're all in Belize City, and so they're really not out on the island, right?
Okay.
But some percentage
But
of
the island is the nice place where people want to be.
Absolutely.
I mean, okay.
Yeah, but the cruise ship goes to Belize City because then they can take people to their own private island. They control it, they own it, they can snorkel it, whatever. And then the mainland excursions, right? But at the end of the day, some small percentage of those cruise ship passengers go, I want to come back to Belize. Well, when they come back to Belize, they're not looking for Mike's hotel. Who's Mike? And am I really getting my coffee? Am I have coffee in the room? No. I want to look for Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, whatever, right? They're looking for a brand. And so, Belize has hit this popular acceptance in the marketplace largely because of the cruise ships. Airlift has caught up, but room count, this is a crazy thing. I mean, this is one of the presentations I give. I give a lot of case studies on Belize. If you look at room count from what was it? Well, it'll be 2014, 15 till now, 24. That 10-year period, room count went from about 7,000 to 10,000, whereas overnight visitors went from 230, 240,000 to a little over 500,000. So you've had this 30% increase in room count. You've had a doubling of overnight visitors, right? So you got this big gap. And so, supply and demand, and again, with the type of traveler who's coming now that's looking for a branded product, it changes the nature of what product is going to be doing well in the marketplace. We feel very strongly that Marriott is the right branding for the marketplace at this moment, right? And that'll change. 10 years from now, it'll be a different answer. But today, 5, 7, 10 years, Marriott's the right answer in that marketplace.
So my question for you is, when are you going to talk the operator into accepting Bitcoin for reservations for the?
Interesting. Belize is anti-crypto. Belize is anti-crypto. They've actually talked about legislation. It's just crazy.
Really?
They've talked about legislation that would restrict crypto transactions. I don't think they've regulated it at this point. I could be wrong. I mean, but yeah, no, they're generally anti-crypto, which I just shake my head and think, what are you?
Maybe after the recent elections and what they've seen around the world, maybe it'll shake somebody up. Maybe they need a politician to step in and run on that platform.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, I know you guys have had a long day. I promised you I wouldn't make this one of our long podcasts, but is there anything else we haven't covered that you feel like?
No,
people...
Mike. I thank you for having me, and nice to see you again. I look forward to seeing a lot more of you as we begin to do the project here in El Zonte. And obviously we'll have a chance to talk more about that
once
in the future.
Once we get a little further along, we'll let the viewers know of the opportunities. But we have this plan to do some development here in El Zonte because everybody wants to be here in El Zonte, and there's only so much inventory right now. So there's a huge demand, and I have this unique property up on the hill with amazing views. And so, excited to see how we can bring that in to reinforce the Bitcoin circular economy here and make sure that in the long term, this is a hub for Bitcoiners.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to working with you and making it happen.
Yeah. So is there, other than buying your book, is there a place people can follow you? Are you on Twitter or what's the website for ECI? Make sure you...
ECIdevelopment.com, and you could hit me at mike.cobb at ECIdevelopment.com.
Okay.
Easiest way to get a hold of me. And I'm easy to chat with, and, buy the book.
Buy the book. All right. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Good to see you.